White House. The president wrote, quote, since 1979, the U.S. Department of Education has spent over $3 trillion with virtually nothing to show for it, despite perpetual per pupil spending having increased by more than 245% over that period. There has been virtually no measurable improvement in student achievement. Here's Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt earlier today laying it all out. Watch.
Not failing America's children. He is saving America's children with this action that he will take later today, directing Linda McMahon, our great Secretary of Education, to dismantle this federal bureaucracy that has taken more than $3 trillion from the American taxpayer since its inception in 1979. And what have we had as a result of that investment in our children's education? Declining test scores in reading, writing, and math. Proficiency levels at record lows for 8th graders, for 4th graders, at every level in every state across this country. That's why the president is returning education back to the people, to those closest to our students in our classrooms, and that is teachers and educators and parents who know what is best for their children. And we are excited about this event that will be here later in the afternoon at the White House. We will have parents and educators and students and also governors from across the country who are excited to embrace this new responsibility of educating our nation's children. I will add one more point. The Department of Education has never educated a child. All it has ever done is stolen money from the taxpayers for more regulation that has hurt our children's education. And it's about time a president does something about it. And thank God President Trump is.
Like so many of the issues, this is long past due, and it is time to end the status quo. And that includes across government and at our southern border, where the Border Patrol says we aren't being handcuffed by poor leadership any longer. Watch.
DOD is bringing in is helping us with the detection and then leading us to the location where the gotaways are trying, or the people are trying to get away, for the apprehension. We're not going to give up 10 yards on every play so that the bodies can get north. And so Border Patrol's focus is to control the international boundary to ensure no one's coming into the country, and those that do make it are apprehended and given a consequence.
So ask yourself, why isn't every state, every American on board with this agenda to put our own citizens first, to protect our homeland, and get our students on the right track in school? It's a common sense agenda, and we just needed a new president to actually get it done. And joining me now, California Assemblyman Bill Essayli. How are you? Pleasure to have you back on the program.
Thanks for having me back. We're doing great here, sunny California.
Sunny California. Okay. So let's talk about, on education. President Trump says we keep spending more, with very little results, worse results, in fact. We've seen this across the country, including in California. What is your reaction to today's actions?
I would say what we have solid proof now is there's no correlation between the amount of money you spend on education and the quality of the education you get in return. I think what the problem is, Kimberly, is the policies around education. It's these teachers unions who care more about, benefits and perks for teachers than they do about teaching the kids. It's about schools who want to indoctrinate kids and not educate kids. It's really the policies. And I'm a big believer. I would love to somehow get this money that goes to the education department and get it to parents. I'm a huge advocate of school choice because I think nobody's going to have the best interest of a child in mind more than their own parents. So let them vote with their pocketbook. If a school isn't serving their kids, then they should take that money, their tax money, and be able to go to a private school, a charter school, homeschool, whatever they want to do that they think is best for their children.
Yes, absolutely. You also have a bill to keep boys out of girls' sports. This is now a part of our education debate. Are any Democrats in Sacramento coming around to this reality?
Does Governor Newsom count? I mean, he just went on a podcast and said he agrees with us. He agrees with us on this issue that it's not fair to let biological boys compete in girls' sports. And that's been our position in the Republican Party. And for that, we've been called bigots and everything else. So the fact that the governor has now signaled that he's in agreement, I think is a huge sign. It means that they see the writing on the wall. They know where Americans are in this issue. November was a referendum. So I'm hopeful that there'll be continued public pressure to restore the way it's always been, that school sports and locker rooms should be based on your biological sex, not someone's subjective identity.
So to me, that is the report card for the education system, showing that we're not getting it done for our students, that we're not actually providing and making sure that we are giving our children, the best. And I guess I also just am reflective about the spending priorities of Democrats, because in California, they want to spend, billions more on illegal immigrant healthcare, but not, to educate in the right way, and that the funds will be, funneled in the right way. What have you found out in your investigation, examination, analysis of this?
So California is obviously the largest state now that offers free universal health care to illegal immigrants, no questions asked. You can show up here today, cross the border, come to California, you will get a Medi-Cal card and have unlimited health care access. What we know now, Kimberly, is the numbers are much bigger than they told us they would be. Last year, they said they were going to spend about $5 billion to fund this program. And then it went up to $10 billion. And now the governor is saying that they're going to be about $6 billion, another $6 billion short just this year to pay for it. 1 out of every $4 being spent on Medicare right now is going to illegal immigrants. This isn't sustainable, and
That's
it's not
astonishing,
fair.
by the way.
It's astonishing, and it's not sustainable. But the governor has said he's doubling down. We said we're going to do it, and we're going to do it. And they don't care if they're going to bankrupt the state in the process. But it's not fair, because it doesn't mean anything to have a Medi-Cal card, by the way. A lot of our seniors rely on this. If you can't even see a doctor or get an appointment, and that's what they're doing. They're putting an additional 2 million people have now gone onto the system. You cannot get quality access to healthcare in the state of California. They are jeopardizing our seniors, our most vulnerable. It's going to be very hard to get access to healthcare in California when they flood it with illegal immigrants.
Well, and how ripe are these programs for fraud? Because this is what I, get concerned about as a former prosecutor. And once someone is in the system, legal or illegal, do they even have the ability to register to vote, even if the law prohibits it?
We've seen massive problems with this. Obviously, the DMV now is in the business of registering voters, and we allow illegal immigrants to get a driver's license. They're supposed to segregate those files, but we've had audits now where there's been a mix-up. It's been an accident. And you know what they wrote into the law here, Kimberly? That if the DMV accidentally registers a non-citizen to vote, that person cannot be prosecuted. It's written into our law, under state law. They are immune from prosecution if the DMV by mistake registers them to vote. So it's a big problem.
That's insane. I don't even know where there's legal precedent for that, quite frankly, right, Drew? I mean, give me a break. All right, so let's talk about the LA Times. They have a news story that in California's deep blue districts, town hall meetings have become sort of venting sessions for voters fed up with Trump, Musk, and the weakness of the Democratic Party. What is driving this, unhinged rage, especially in deep blue districts? And in your opinion, how does it contrast to what you're hearing in your own district?
Yeah. So here's what I know, Kimberly. Normal people don't have time to go to town hall meetings. So what the left does is they flood these meetings with activists, paid activists often. I've seen this at school board meetings. They bust people in. And all the left is interested in is getting a photo shoot. It's a media. It's a photo op. They want visuals so they can play on TV and make it look like, there's all this outrage against the current administration. It's just not true. I know what my congressman's doing, a lot of people are doing, are these teletown halls, which are way better. It's more effective. You get a phone call, in the evening, and it invites you to ask a question to your congressman. And that's a better way to access people and get them questions answered directly. So I know there's a lot of teletown halls going on, but we're not doing theater. We're not interested in the theater so the left can show up and have some dramatic scene that they want to play on TV. That's what that's all about.
Yeah, and so you're an attorney like I am. What do you make of all these national injunctions? Is that in itself a form, of lawfare?
It's a big problem. Look, the judicial branch is the third branch of government. It's designed to be the weakest of the three. And what we have going on now is judges basically imposing their individual will and judgment over the presidency. The executive branch is vested in the president of the United States. We cannot have hundreds of judges throughout the state playing president. It's a big problem. And if Chief Justice Roberts does not want Congress to start impeaching judges or reining in their power, then he better get his courts under control. The Congress has a lot of power to control these courts. They can take away their ability to issue injunctions. They can rein in their funding. They can eliminate some of these lower courts. If Chief Justice Roberts does not want a constitutional confrontation with the other branches, he better get these judges under control very quickly.
Well, also, what about process, right? Because aren't there supposed to be injunction bonds that are posted under the rules of civil procedure? What can you tell us?
They are violating all kinds of precedent and rules, but they know that it will take months or years to make it up through the appellate process. This insane case where they protecting the Venezuelan terrorist organization. The judge, I've never seen this before, I'm a lawyer, he certified a class action in a couple of hours so he could cover a whole class of people. That's not how that works. Any of us who've litigated, to certify a class action case, you got to go through tons of discovery and there's lots of motion work, and it takes months or years to certify a class. The judge did it in hours. That's unprecedented. They're lawless. And you know what I've noticed, Kimberly? They're relying on these senior judges. Okay. These are senior judges. They're already at the end of their career, and they're willing to go out there and take the hit for the cause. So this, to me, they're activists. It's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, they really are, and that's a problem. I was talking to, Mike Davis about this and others, that it really is a problem, and it's got to get shut down. Because, by the way, I don't care what side you're on. Be on the side of the Constitution and justice. I don't care if you're a Democrat, you're a liberal. The rules should be the same for everyone. They should be adhered to. The law should be followed, and there should be due process. And that is the bottom line. And there should not be weaponization of any justice system, any agency, any lawfare going on. And we do not need and must shut down and remove activist judges. That is the big problem here. And what else is on?
I think there should be emergency appeals to the Supreme Court in all these cases. You got to put this on their lap, and you got to call out Chief Justice Roberts, see if he's going to actually control that branch or not, or if we need Congress to get involved.
Yeah, and what else is on the docket in Sacramento? What do we need to know?
Yeah. Oh, it's always something up here. Honestly, Kimberly, they always come up with harebrained ideas here. They're trying to get rid of the castle doctrine that we have in California, so that way you have to first flee before you can defend yourself. There's all kinds of crazy bills up here. But you know what we're focused on right now, the Republicans? We have to change our election system. So what we're going to be laser focused on for the next few months is this ballot initiative that we're going to qualify and finally have voter ID put on the ballot in the state of California. And we believe that if the voters can decide this question, the majority overwhelmingly support voter ID. That's how we're going to change California. Are you feeling a little bit optimistic in terms of the direction of what's going on, and that people are kind of like being more emboldened, they're more awake, and in a sense, in California, about like wanting things to be in a good position, understanding that a change needs to happen, seeing the change that President Trump is bringing nationally, and wanting to embrace that change in California? Yeah, it's twofold. I think a lot of people that have just been lifelong Democrats are finally starting to wake up a little bit and realize like what's going on here, especially with the fires in LA. I think was a huge catalyst to see how the state's been mismanaged, and there really is no Republican to blame for that. The other thing that President Trump's historic election victory has done is it's energized the conservative party, the conservative movement, and the right. Before that, I would say most of them has just felt very defeated. It's like they don't even want to get out of bed and try. But now with the President Trump's historic election, there's obviously this new renewed energy and sense of, wait, we can actually win elections and get things done, even if it's stacked against us. And that's what this voter ID initiative is all about, is it's like, look, we're not going to keep fighting or playing under the rules of the Democrat Party. We're going to change the rules in California. And I do think voter ID will have a big effect on our elections here in California, especially congressional races. We had a lot of races here, Kimberly, that were lost by just a few hundred votes. Wow. So if we can win these races on the margins.
Yeah, think about the impact of that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's so attainable. It's so attainable. What's the state, and talk about, quite frankly, the bold and the brave, bold and the beautiful, in the state of California about, the Republican Party. And is there a path, do you believe, to work with Governor Newsom?
That's a loaded question. I would say we just elected a new chairperson, Corinne Rankins. We have a new party chair. We are much more focused on being an opposition party now. I will say that. Before, I think that the attitude was kind of like, let's go along and get along and see what we can make of this. I think those days are over. I think we have a true fighting opposition party. Whether Governor Newsom is serious or not, I think he provides us an opportunity to message to people who've not traditionally been Republican voters. So when Governor Newsom embraces something like protecting girls' sports, that gives us an opportunity to go out in the community and say, look, even the governor agrees with us on this. So are the Republicans really out of the mainstream, or is it the Democrats out of the mainstream? So I'm happy to engage with the governor on these issues because I think it pits elements of the Democrat Party against itself. And I think that's the biggest fallout I've seen from the Charlie Kirk interview is now the progressive Democrats in the legislature are really mad at the governor for even doing that interview and saying the things he did. So, I'm all for stoking that division within their party.
Yeah, well, it is it's an interesting situation. But I mean, I think that he is trying to be more moderate and a centrist by, moving a little bit to the middle, because I mean, it's the only way to govern. I mean, how are you going to do? It's all very fascinating to me. Let's be honest. Kamala Harris got smoked. Okay.
Yep.
And essentially Biden. But now she has the audacity to even consider like she's going to run for governor. Personally, I think it's going to be Antonio Villaraigosa. I know California politics, Bay Area politics, all of that inside out. I know all these people. And I'm just saying that. I'm not just talking, giving an opinion about something of which I'm unfamiliar. I'm just wondering, given the state of play right now in California, how are you seeing things shape up? Do you think Kamala is really going to run? I mean, it seems to me a lot of the Democrat donors are very fed up with the whole situation, still smarting over the loss.
Yeah, no, everything you said is dead on accurate. The thing with Newsom, though, is, he's still the governor. So he's going to have to make decisions on bills and legislation. So I think that's to be determined if he's actually going to govern more moderate now, or if he's just doing this PR thing. As far as the governor race here, I do think it is Kamala's nomination to give up right now. When you think about what really wins elections, it's name ID. And I agree with you. Antonio Villaraigosa has a very good shot, but he's been out of politics for a while. He's probably the most moderate of the declared candidates. But, her name ID is really high. So I just wonder if she does decide to go with it, she'll just be automatically in first place just because everyone knows who she is. A lot of these other players running right now are really unknown. Members of the legislature, the lieutenant governor, nobody knows who these people are. And I think it's still early. You're going to have wild cards here. I mean, we know Rick Caruso might jump in the race. There's all kinds of other players that I think can really fundamentally change the dynamics. And then, as you know, California's a top two. So, we'd love it to be Republican versus Democrat, but there's always a scenario where it could be top two Democrats or something on the ballot. So there's a lot of wild cards in California.
It's really true. It's always been like that. I don't know what's going on, but we still have a dear place in our heart for it, special place, the Golden State, and definitely for you. Let's keep an eye on everything, but I think it's very clear your governor is intending and trying to be the nominee for the next presidential election.
That much is clear.
All right, Assemblyman Bill Essayli, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and coming up, much more on all of this. But first, free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down. We have always believed in empowering independent voices, and now Rumble is taking it to the next level. We are excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. And it's more than a subscription, it is a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. Why not join Rumble Premium today? For a limited time, you can get $10 off an annual plan using promo code KG10. So just visit rumble.com/premium/KG10 and you can claim your discount today. Again, that's rumble.com/premium/KG10. Now, President Trump is holding an event with education leaders after signing a new order to get our schools back on track. It's much needed. It is long overdue. And of course, Democrats and their teacher unions, allies, are having a meltdown. Here's Teachers Union President Randy Weingarten trying to rewrite, in fact, history by suggesting she was against COVID school lockdowns. Yeah, you can't make this up. Watch.
I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you a little bit, Randy, because you know that teachers' unions, especially yours, has gotten a lot of criticism in recent years, especially after COVID. We saw, for instance, the support of overly broad school closures. That's one of the big examples. And that has fueled a lot of animus towards the Department of Education, towards teachers' unions. Do you reflect on that? I mean, what are you taking away from that and the position that may have fueled sort of the support that allows President Trump to be in a position to do something that you find so problematic, like eliminating the Department of Education in all intents and purposes?
So, Brianna, COVID was a terrible time for us. And as you know, because I was on your show a lot and other shows, I wanted schools to be reopened as early as April of 2020. The issue was the fear and the issue was the safety issues.
And joining me now, a Daily Signal columnist and author of The War on History, The Conspiracy to Rewrite America's Past, Jarrett Stephan. Thank you so much for being on the program. We love having you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Great to see you. Okay, so this is very interesting. I was thinking a lot about this today. Speaking of sort of like rewriting the past, what? Randy Weingarten seems to be doing just that on COVID school closures and the impact on education. Want to get your reaction. You were probably just as flummoxed as I was.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable and rich from Weingarten. I mean, she was at the forefront of the school closures that were catastrophic for education, for young people across the country. I mean, the amount of damage that actually happened has set kids back for years. In fact, there are many studies that say that these kids will never actually recover from the time that those lockdowns actually happen. This was pushed by Weingarten. It was pushed by teachers' unions. It was pushed especially in a lot of blue states where lockdowns continued far longer than they ever should have. And the catastrophe for education in America is something that'll be very difficult to undo. I think it created, of course, a lot of distrust among Americans about the establishment, about the education establishment in America. And there are a lot of young people now who are far behind, maybe behind as far as entering the workforce, going to college. So there's really a cascade effect. It's quite rich to hear from the people who pushed it the most, basically saying, oh, no, we never did that they want to rewrite the history, the past of how things were during COVID.
So how has the educational structure of our schools, seemed to decline so quickly?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I would say that it was certainly during COVID where you saw the biggest declines, and that was because a lot of students were not able to actually be in classrooms for instructions. There were a lot of students who were just simply at home. There was a lot of neglect in the classroom. I think what actually happened during that time too is a lot of the indoctrination that was going on in schools was also exposed during that time as parents got a glimpse into what was happening in a lot of public K-12 education. I think it was in a way, an illuminating moment for education in America. I think that's why now there's a lot more of a push for options like school choice, for homeschooling. I think a lot of parents frustrated with the system that we've paid a lot of money for, a lot of taxpayer money into a very, I would say, ultimately bloated K-12 public system that has not served the American people, certainly hasn't served the many children, the parents who've come to rely on it over the years.
Well, the swamp, quite frankly, has been a burden on doing what's best for schools and for students. And we've seen this, historically. And then you have people like this that perpetrate a false narrative and try to rewrite history. And it slaps you in the face because it's offensive because you actually know the truth and the facts. Nevertheless, they still continue to try to push this narrative. What's your take?
Yeah, 100%, especially when you talk about the Department of Education, which I'm very glad to see that the Trump administration is taking direct actions to go against this department. I think there's this false narrative that it's needed for education in the United States. If anything, test scores have actually flattened and declined since the inclusion of this new department that started under Jimmy Carter. I'm glad after a lot of discussion for generations that's happened, especially under other Republican administrations, that something is actually being done about this. And I think there will actually be a positive benefit because a lot of what the Department of Education is about control. It's about control of K to 12 education. It's about pushing an LGBTQ agenda onto schools and a lot of things coming from the federal government. That's not where education should be located. It should be located at the local level, at the community level, and really should be directed by the parents, who I think should have the ultimate say in their child's education. And I think that we're going to get it back to a system that's like that, in part because of how terrible things got in the last 5 years.
And what about, higher education? Federal funds were withdrawn from UPenn this week, and other schools are also facing accountability. How has higher education become such an arm of the swamp? It's happened gradually over time, or when did you first sort of go, wow, okay, this is definitely a shift, paradigm shift?
I think this is something that's been building for a very long time. I mean, back when William F. Buckley wrote God and Man at Yale back in the 50s, there was a known infiltration of leftists on college campuses. I think, unfortunately, what's happened is the administrations are now all one way. There's no intellectual diversity on college campuses. I think you're seeing now, especially with a lot of the protests that have taken place over the last year, I think a lot of chaos on college campuses. Again, I think people's eyes have really been opened that these aren't places. I know they're trying to say right now, oh, you're pulling money out of vital research, but I think people are on to what's really going on. That the humanities departments, the administration have overtaken the function of these universities. If you want research and you want all these good things, then you need to remove that cancer. I think that's what the Trump administration is doing. We're no longer going to underwrite all this with taxpayer money. I mean, many of these schools, half of their funds come from taxpayers. They're sitting on very large endowments. They want the American taxpayer to again pay to bail out student loans. Again, that's just unacceptable for this country, especially as many of these schools push ideas that are, I would say, very much anti-American. They certainly are not cultivating a serious education like the American people expect. And so I'm very happy that the Trump administration has taken this seriously and started to put pressure from the outside, because these schools have clearly no intention of reforming from the inside. They need that outside pressure.
Meanwhile, there's been a wave of violent attacks, against Tesla vehicles. It's been quite pronounced. If the rules were reversed, wouldn't there be nonstop outrage? I mean, it's very serious, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable what's happening with these terrorist attacks on Tesla vehicles. Obviously, this is all attached to Elon Musk. I think it's quite a spectacle when you consider the fact that Musk just used SpaceX to launch into space and save these astronauts. Meanwhile, you have leftist agitators back down at home blasting car dealerships. I know there's some on the left who say, well, there were conservatives who wanted to boycott Bud Light, but that's a boycott. That's simply saying I'm not going to spend my money on something I don't agree with. This is something very different. This is basically, I mean, these are acts, I would say, in many cases of terrorism. They're trying to scare people and say, well, I'm afraid to now own a Tesla because I may have my car keyed, or I might have my car firebombed by somebody with a Molotov cocktail. Unfortunately, this is part of the long-term strategy of a lot of leftists through time. I mean, we saw this in 2020 with a lot of the BLM movement, the so-called mostly peaceful movement. It really wasn't. It was quite violent, and it was trying to threaten and intimidate people into silence. And it's very un-American. It's shameful to see what's happening. And I think a lot of Democrats right now who are basically saying nothing on this issue, I think should be particularly ashamed.
Yeah, well, now we're seeing some of these, blue state governors pivoting to the center in their rhetoric, but will it be followed by actions, right? So we see a lot of what I call semantic gymnastics, but will it be implemented from a policy perspective?
Yeah, and I think that's the big question, because I know that the left is now having a lot of trouble. The Democrat Party is more unpopular than it's been basically in my lifetime. There's a lot of pressure now to triangulate like Democrats did in the 1990s. But I think the reality is, especially when you look at the actual policies of these administrations, you see the policies of Democrats in Congress who couldn't even pass legislation to protect women's sports from biological men, an issue that's an 80-20 issue among the American people. American people don't want men participating in women's sports. But even then, every Democrat voted against that bill. And I think you're seeing this with a lot of blue state governors too. Some are trying to pivot to the center and they're trying to rhetorically go to the center, they think, to pick up votes. I don't think it'll ultimately work because the people didn't just reject the rhetoric, they rejected the policies, which they've, I think, been revealed to be quite disastrous. And so I think they have to do more than just change the rhetoric and hope that people follow. I think the actual policies
Yeah.
need to change, and that's going to be a lot harder for them.
Yeah, and you're a fellow Bay Area native like myself. You also have a recent piece about the California bullet train, which is quite interesting. To nowhere, right? Bullet train to nowhere. Whatever happened to that? I mean, what the hell, right? And who is still making money off of it? That's what I want to know. Follow the money.
Well, that's the bigger issue. It's amazing because back when I was in college, 2009, I was writing about how this project would be a disaster. And here we are. I mean, think about the Transcontinental Railroad was already finished in the amount of time that they've put down just a few miles of tracks on this thing. I think it's really one of the biggest boondoggles in American history. It was promised to the American people, to the people of California, well, we're going to connect Los Angeles and the Bay Area. Sounds very nice. But nothing's actually happened. It seems like what's happened is they've enriched a number of administrators for this project. Very few tracks have actually been laid down. They've been laid down in a fairly rural part of the state. And we're never going to see anything. It's just going to simply be a cash cow for the people involved. And yet they still want federal funds to keep this going. I do hope that the Trump administration looks at those funds and says, no, we're not going to pay for this anymore. If people of California want to pay, I guess that's their business. Although I suspect that most Californians at this point are onto the game. They know this thing is never going to happen.
And will any of this corruption ever spur real political change in Sacramento? That's the thing. You want to see what the action and then reaction is.
I very much hope so. I think that in some places there has been, even in a lot of blue areas. I live in New York. I think there actually has been a bit of a shift in New York as people see some of the bad policies, especially on the immigration issue, the crime issue. That's obviously been a big deal in California, as it feels like a lot of cities have fallen into very bad state. And I think there are more people who are now open to a different message. The legacy media, I think, is failing. It's failing to get through to people. They can't control the narrative anymore. And so I do think there is a shift, even in places that are deep blue like California. There are a lot of fed up people who want to return to common sense.
Well, look, I have a soft spot in my heart, for California. I was born and raised there in San Francisco, in the Mission District, where my parents fell in love and, went to all school there and law school there. And and I was first lady. That's not a secret. And it used to be so good, so glorious, so beautiful, and it frustrates me when I've seen what's happened there and what's transpired. It's been so disturbing on so many different levels.
It has. I was born and raised in Oakland, California. My parents are from there. I love it in many ways. It's a beautiful place. I mean, the greatest weather in the country, in my opinion. Such a wonderful place. But you've seen how ideology, I think, has really changed things and made things a lot worse. Especially, you talk about the crime issue that is absolutely has been out of control for a very long time. It feels like nothing's going to change. That this is just a place that's going to fall into catastrophe, and it makes me very sad. I always hope that the Golden State will revive itself. I think it's important for the country, ultimately, for California to get its act together. I hope that someday I can say, hey, I'm from California. Isn't that great? And people say, yeah. Instead of people like, oh, you're from California, where things are crazy. I would like things to change soon. I hope maybe this general vibe shift around the country will eventually hit California too, because I think there are fed up people who are tired of how things are going.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just feel like something's changing a little bit. Like we're kind of going the right direction. That people are more aware. They're more awake. They're seeing the juxtaposition of what they could have. There's no longer sort of this lethargic avoidance about, okay, you're in a blue state, just whatever. They're kind of like, no. We like what we see going on over there. So maybe we need some of this infrastructure and implementation, in our states and our cities and municipalities. I just hope it happens. I mean, I don't enjoy seeing failure in blue states. I just don't. I want all Americans to prosper. I don't want people to feel like they have to leave a state or move out of a city, and abandon it like an abandoned property. So, I mean, overall, are you optimistic, Jared?
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that too. I mean, we love our country, we love America. That
Yes.
means, small town America. It means New York City too. I mean, I like the fact that the Trump administration says get the subway under control. People, look, if you're a tourist and visiting, you shouldn't be afraid to go on the subway. That's unacceptable. I think we should care about how the country operates. We should have a certain pride in this. The fact that a lot of our cities are dangerous, yes, they're blue cities. But the fact that they're dangerous, the fact they look like they're in disrepair, that's a blow to American pride. Things shouldn't be that way, and they weren't always that way. They can change, and I'd like to see them change. We should be proud of these things once again. All parts of this country, from sea to shining sea, and I totally agree with you. It doesn't matter if it's Los Angeles or New York or a small town Alabama. We should care about all these things and want the American people to prosper.
All right, perfect. I'm for that all the way. I just want Americans to win. We're all lucky to be in this country. I want kids to have a great education. I want girls to compete against girls and boys against boys in sports. We're getting that done too. And I'm a former special education teacher like my mother. So I just, I want to lift all children up. I want to make sure that we're protecting them. We're looking out. We're giving them the best that this country has to offer. They are the future. And so I think that's really important. But definitely love having you on the program. Super smart, talented. Tell everyone where they can find you, get your book, all of the above.
Absolutely. You can find my work at dailysignal.com, which is the website that I write for. You can find my book, The War on History, at amazon.com or really any major book retailer.
All right, all right. Jared Stepman, thank you so much for being on the program, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And my closing remarks just ahead, but also be sure to check out the good folks over at 1775 Coffee Company. We talk about it all the time. Don't compromise on taste, quality, or your values. And 1775 coffee is brewed to perfection, it is crafted with precision, and it is built on patriotism. The farm to cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. All the beans are ethically and exclusively single sourced. So why not try 1775 coffee today? Go to 1775coffee.com/KG for 15% off your first order. Once again, President Trump is righting the left's wrongs by actually sticking up for the Americans who have been forgotten for far too long. And that includes our students, our parents, our teachers, and our families. And as I've said, it is a new day in America, and we are just getting started. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to do the show and be with you. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage. And please don't miss Don Jr.'s Big Show at 6 p.m. Eastern tonight. He's live.